There have been very few times in the history of seminary education that a first-year student sitting down in a seminary class for the very first time didn't feel at least a little overwhelmed. Coming at students in those first days is a deluge of information, biblical texts, new languages, and deeper theological exploration than most have ever experienced. It can all add up to a daunting start.
Well, my first class was an intensive summer Hebrew course, and so right off the bat, everyone was nervous and wondering how we were going to make it through these 7 weeks.
God of the seasons and the times of our lives, we gather before you now for a very special time of table fellowship among friends.
This transition from life before seminary to life enveloped in a fascinating array of biblical studies is getting smoother every year at Union Presbyterian Seminary. Today, first-year students are walking into their first classes more prepared, more comfortable, and feeling like they are already part of a loving, learning community. They have entered as part of the Communities of Learning program, an innovative new approach to seminary education that is unique to Union, and they can immediately see a difference.
I think one of the advantages was already starting theological discussion and realizing that we have these sacred texts and they mean a lot to us and they mean a lot to our people, but we can still have conversations, we can still examine them, we can still disagree and still have a sense of community. And so I think it was helpful coming to the seminary already participating in theological discussion, which at that depth doesn't really happen outside of this setting.
The Communities of Learning program paves the way toward that first seminary experience by offering new students the opportunity to engage in online theological study and conversation with each other, faculty advisors, and alumni mentors during the summer before classes start in the fall. In the process, new students learn a new language and grow new friendships. Through this small group experience, students get a preview of the type of theological reading and reflection they will encounter upon entering seminary, while also getting an idea of the extraordinary community they will soon be joining, a community that will, for many, last a lifetime.
What the Community of Learning did for me is it gave me some confidence, and it was the confidence I needed at that time and that place to be able to say, I can do this. This is for me. This is what I've been called to do. I was excited about just answering questions that were asked of me, reading the material, and having discussions with mentors, with faculty that have already gone through the program, with students who were like me, just starting, and having that sharing. It was just really a great way to get your feet wet.
Joining the Communities of Learning eased almost every fear that I had of biblical illiteracy, to not knowing how to express pastoral concerns very well, and just talking in a theological framework.
Union Presbyterian Seminary forms these small communities of learning in this way. First, there are the communities themselves, made up of 6 to 10 students, grouped together with 1 faculty advisor and 2 alumni mentors. The communities meet and interact on an internet blackboard where they have access to readings and discussion questions, much like those they will encounter in that critical first year. After about 10 weeks of online work, these groups are brought together on campus for a weekend retreat where they finally meet in person. A sense of true community has been formed among people who in most cases had not yet met and yet share a common calling. Students form vital relationships with the mentors they meet through Communities of Learning, alumni who not only help them better discern their call, but also offer practical advice and lessons learned from their own experiences in ministry.
It was crucial, I think, to merging into this theological education. I think that having people that have been here and walked the path, it's a privilege to be able to pick their brains and gain insight as to how this walk's going to look from a practical standpoint as well as a theological one.
This is a Presbyterian institution. I am actually an ELCA Lutheran. So in a lot of regards, it was there were some concerns as to how I was going to be able to fit into the curriculum and the community as an outsider, I guess you could say. And it was interesting because my mentor is not Presbyterian as well. And he was able to enlighten me as to how Union was not only able to lift up his theological views and his religious upbringing and his sense of call, but also strengthen it, and how that's actually embraced here at Union. It's truly a sense of community, and it's very inclusive of other denominations and other faith traditions.
The sense of fulfillment came from having gone through that process before, and some of the same questions that were in my mind when I matriculated through this process, and as Nate mentioned, being from a different denomination, it's a sense of fulfillment to be able to share that experience, and sometimes to be able to pass on things that maybe you didn't receive at the same level for the benefit of someone else.
This creates a generational evolution of the church and the seminary. Every student today has been touched by students from generations ago. This mentorship program will only strengthen that generations-long connection.
I think traditions are really, really important for the church, because I think we need to build on those traditions. It doesn't mean that we need to be stuck in those traditions, but I think we need to build on those traditions, and from that platform of tradition, find new ways to minister in the world. And that's one of the things that I love about coming back here, because I get access to these wonderful, bright minds that are still, to a certain extent, naive, if I can use that word, and just have all these wonderful ideas. And for me as a pastor, it's wonderful to come back within the tradition of this place, but get that sense of newness from the students that are here.
What it did for me was to help me stop in the busyness, in the day-to-day busyness of being a pastor, and go back and re-examine what brought me here, what are the things that I have learned, which I don't always have time to think about. And so that was a real gift to me.
While alumni mentors help paint a big picture of the seminary experience for first-year students, the professors who take part in the Communities of Learning program help better prepare them to enter into their academic studies.
I think the great strength of the program is that it allows students to begin to think critically and openly about what's about to take place in their journey through their MDiv program the summer prior. For me, the biggest benefit is along the lines of what Cam was saying, is it allows them to probe questions about the Bible and theology, and it does so in a non-evaluative setting, in the sense that we as professors, I was a mentor the first year summer the program was in its inception, and it just allows us as professors and students to reflect together, to form community together, and to do so in a way where there's not a grade hovering over the enterprise, and that's a very enjoyable thing, I think, for all who are involved.
Before they enter a classroom, students will be working with a curriculum based upon a case study approach. These students are working to lead real church communities, so they will be adapting their biblical information with real-life scenarios in ministry. These case studies are designed with Union's pioneering curriculum in mind, one that affirms 3 roles that graduates will be fulfilling when they leave seminary and go out into the church: practicing theologian, congregational leader, and community witness.
We were not starting from scratch this fall. This past summer we used a case study approach, which I use in my classes, so students were already familiar with that if they were in COL, and I've noticed a difference in the quality of responses and lost anxiety about what the whole theological education enterprise is about.
It allows students to see how approachable faculty members are at the seminary. A lot of times professors encourage you to talk with them one-on-one. And even if you don't get close to the exact mentor in your group, it's the opportunity to see that you can approach professors here for more in-depth conversations, for personal conversations, and even for pastoral care.
They do a good job of facilitating discussion and not always just letting us refer to them as the expert. It would be easy to just always ask Sam what this means, but instead he allows us to wrestle with it ourselves and kind of guides us in that conversation, but doesn't always tell us this is right and this is wrong. And that's a model in a lot of our classrooms, but it starts with the communities of learning. And I think watching the mentors and being involved in that program helps teach us how to do that when we leave here.
Especially when we leave here to go into communities where we have to acknowledge that we don't come in bringing all the answers, and that we're there to lead by serving, by encouraging others to explore those questions themselves. Again, modeling that communities of learning idea.
Before the end of the first year, the transition is complete from individuals unsure about taking on the seminary challenge to a true community supporting each new student with generations of guidance and a shared calling.